Hello and welcome to episode 174 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. I'm so excited for today's show because there are a lot of rumors about the Disney parks flying with the D23 Expo on tap for August 9th through 11th in Anaheim, California. My good friend Maz will be here to start a 2-week conversation about what announcements we expect, want, and don't want to hear announced in SoCal. Very quickly, before we get started, things have been happening fast for us lately. In May, I was offered a speaking engagement due to the podcast, and I have been approved for media credentials for Tampa Bay Comic-Con coming up in late August. We're also working on a number of other projects to continue to grow the channel and provide you with more and more quality content. We need to keep gaining subscribers. If you haven't subscribed to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel, please take 30 seconds to do that right now. It really helps us. If you are subscribed, go back and check out old episodes of the podcast and old videos. Like and leave positive comments. All of those things help us, and they don't cost you a dime. In addition to theme park content, which is always a priority for us, I've also been going to a bunch of minor league ballparks to see games and show you the surrounding communities. I've focused on some charities and some other people trying to make a difference. I hit up Disney's Hollywood Studios and Disney's Animal Kingdom on both of those parks' recent birthdays. We are even planning on splurging in the next few weeks and actually staying on Walt Disney World property for the first time since I stayed there in early 2021. I took my wife Courtney to storybook dining with Snow White at Artist Point in Disney's Wilderness Lodge. There are a lot of reasons to keep an eye on the YouTube channel. Right now, let's get things started with today's episode. Thanks for being here, Maz.
Thanks for having me.
So we are going to talk about D23 today. It is coming up in August. There was a huge D23 back in 2019. And then, of course, the world exploded. And almost everything from that D23 either didn't happen or took 6 years longer than it was expected to take. Obviously, that 6 years is an exaggeration because it hasn't been 6 years yet, but it felt like 6 years. So we are going to talk about not only what we expect to hear at D23, what we might like to hear from D23, but we're also going to talk about how confident we are in any announcements that are made at this year's D23. For anybody who doesn't know, I mean, sometimes we throw out these terms like everybody is super familiar with them, but the D23 Expo in Anaheim happens every, I believe, 3 years, and it is big announcements in all aspects of the Disney company. So they'll talk about movies, they'll talk about television shows, but our main focus is usually on the theme parks. We might talk about a few of those movie announcements as well. Theme park announcements from this event tend to be huge, get people very excited, and about half of them end up coming into existence. Unless there's a pandemic, then half is even a little too optimistic. So we are going to talk about that. It's August 9th through the 11th this year, and we have already planned to get our initial reactions so that we will have them for you the following Thursday. Going to be pretty exciting because we have had some long conversations after past D23s. This is one of the areas where Disney and Universal differ greatly. There are a few of those areas, and this is one of them. Disney announces like they're throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what will stick. Universal announces something after they've had construction on it for 6 months already. So it can be very different. We understand the churro stand that was Velocicoaster for like a year. They were like, oh, we're building a churro stand here. And you could see Velocicoaster going up as they were still sticking to that ruse, if you will. So, what do you think about that as far as the differences in the two companies and how they deal with announcements?
I mean, personally, I prefer Universal's method. Um, I think that the way Disney does it, it's fun to hear all the blue sky concepts and to hear, we might be doing this. It's entertaining. But I think what it does ultimately is it sets people up for disappointment because you stand on a stage and you say, "Hey, maybe we'll be doing this. Maybe we'll be doing this. We're dreaming big. We're having, look at this concept art." And then the majority of the time, reality gets in the way of those dreams. And what we get doesn't end up being what was pitched. And even if we understand that, like you said, they're just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall, you still get these ideas in your head. And I think it sets people up for the disappointment of saying, well, hold on. You said we'd get this, but we got this, which is a smaller scale, different thing than what you showed us 24 months ago. Why are we getting something different? So I think that being able, like Universal does, to say, hey, this is exactly what we're doing. Construction's already started, so you know it's happening, and here's our estimated time frame. It keeps people a little more grounded, I think.
I immediately think of Spaceship Earth in these situations because there was an announcement of a retheme at the D23 in 2019. And then they actually had a date for the closure of Spaceship Earth that was announced for May of 2020. Now, obviously, we know that May of 2020, the theme parks weren't even open at the time, but as the reopening of the theme parks was getting closer and closer, they just sort of off the cuff announced that Spaceship Earth would be opening with the theme parks. And then we never got it. And then the other day, I see a post of somebody like, well, I just got evac'd off Spaceship Earth and I had to walk down 178 stairs or whatever because we were all the way at the top. And it's a ride that desperately needs at least a track update or some sort of physical update just so that the ride itself works. And it hasn't gotten that attention, and it's a huge people eater at Epcot. And we were supposed to get a retheme. People were either excited or some people maybe weren't excited about the retheme, but even just having technical updates, a lot of these Disney rides are honestly like falling apart a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like with Spaceship Earth in particular, I've been seeing a lot more of stopped on Spaceship Earth, got stuck on Spaceship Earth. And you can tell that this ride needed updates back in 2019. And, forcing it to keep going hasn't been a good thing for the ride, which isn't a good thing for the guests.
So I'm just going to throw a blue sky concept. That's going to be a term that we use a lot. Blue sky concept art that Disney uses where they show you something, but it's like an ink blot and you interpret what they are showing you. And then that's actually part of the problem because you have what you want in your mind and Disney is thinking something completely different. But blue sky, because we are recording this episode before the episode that is airing about Spaceship Earth, so you haven't heard that one yet. If you could pick a new narrator for Spaceship Earth, and while this is blue sky, it has to actually be possible. Like the person has to be alive. Like this isn't like who would you have dinner with or anything like that. Who would you pick to be the new narrator for Spaceship Earth?
I mean, I feel like you could guess this one pretty easily. I'm going to say Julie Andrews. I think she would be an excellent narrator.
Okay, in the episode where I talk about retheming Spaceship Earth, which already aired, so go back and listen to that one if you've missed it. I had Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke co-narrating as one of my options. It wasn't the one I went with at the end. It wasn't the one that I actually think should happen. But I thought that if we could get that chemistry one last time as Spaceship Earth narration, I think that would be perfect.
That would be like answering all my dreams. I think Spaceship Earth would have to become like my new favorite ride or something, just because of that.
So, do you think we're going to get an announcement on Spaceship Earth? And given how much was put into Epcot and then the pandemic sort of slowed down what we got from Epcot, do you think we're going to continue getting those announcements, or do you think that it is going to be a situation where Disney just says, we did Epcot already and moves on to something else?
I think we're going to kind of end up in that we did Epcot already situation. I think there are other parks and other areas of other parks that need attention desperately that Disney is going to be focusing on. Just from some things they've already said and just my own guesses, I feel like with Epcot walls finally coming down, I don't see them being in a hurry to put up a new one.
So then a little side tangent. Would you say, and we still have Test Track coming, like we know that's coming at this point. Would you say that what we have gotten from Epcot, what we are expecting to get in the next few months, and then adding in the re-theme to Test Track, do you feel like the Epcot re-theme, reimagining was worth it? Or do you think we really got shortchanged in the long run?
I mean, for me, the most exciting part of Epcot is the countries. So I'm always going to enjoy that, and I feel like that didn't really change much. I think it certainly looks nice. I feel like a lot of the changes we've gotten so far, just with the state that they were in when I was last there, haven't made too meaningful of a difference. Now, I love the new Journey of Water attraction. I think that is gorgeous. And I love that you've got a little way to cool off during the day because Epcot gets hot and you need that. And I think the new Test Track renovation is going to make a big difference too. But, I guess we'll see when the walls come down, what it's like navigating and what it really looks like all together.
I also want to add that while it's nice to have the cool down of Journey of Water during the day, it is also beautiful at night. So there are reasons to go at both times during the day. And there aren't that many attractions where you want to hit them up twice in a day. So that is a real added benefit of that. And kids love it. And it gives kids a chance to sort of blow some of that energy. And that's a big deal, especially in a park like Epcot, where for half the day they're going to be following around their parents while they eat at food booths. So I think that Journey of Water is an A+. They nailed that one. I agree with you. World Showcase is the reason that I go to Epcot, and I'm one of those adults who likes to hit the food booths, who likes to, do a lot of those things that aren't necessarily rides. But I do feel like with Epcot, we were given this construction wall nightmare, this maze of a just disaster area for so long. And in the long run, we just didn't get enough to make it worth it. I think that if it wasn't such an inconvenience to navigate that theme park for years, I would agree with you, but I do think that they just really, like that whole center of the park for years was a mess. And just to get back to World Showcase from the front of the park took forever. And it was a nightmare for a little bit. And I know that that's an exaggeration. It wasn't a real disaster area. It wasn't a real nightmare. We went through a global pandemic at the time. So I'm not taking things out of perspective. but it just really, really was an inconvenience for quite some time for us to get not a lot of changes in the long run. This is where I want to move into Disneyland because they are going to be getting the most changes. They just okayed Disneyland Forward. So they're moving forward, pun intended, with that project. And this is the one where I'm the most worried about how much we're actually going to get because we were sold big changes. So if this just ends up being an extension to downtown Disney and another hotel, I think people are going to be furious. But we could be getting extensions to both theme parks that go across the street, more attractions, more lands. When people were talking about where are they going to put Avatar, well, all of a sudden, now you have all of this land where they could put Avatar. This is where I'm scared because I think the blue sky concept art that we've seen, what they have used to sell Anaheim on voting for this, is so pie in the sky that I just don't see them delivering with all of that.
Yeah, I feel like in some ways, because they had to get Anaheim's approval, they'll have to stick to it to a certain amount. Because they had to say, you know, this is what we're thinking of doing. Will you approve this? And they had to kind of get that sign off. So I think there will be some sort of guardrails on what they do, but I definitely don't think it's going to be, you know, exactly what they pitched. And I definitely don't think we're going to look at them side by side when they're finally finished, you know, in 2042 or whatever it is, and go, oh, yes, this is exactly what we, you know, thought was going to happen. I do think that this year we're going to get a lot of Disneyland announcements. I think that's where like the lion's share of the parks announcements will be. Just because of that, they have to have some ideas. And I would be very surprised if the Avatar ride, if we didn't get more information on that and a little more clarification on what that's going to be.
I think you make an amazing point about Anaheim having to okay things and they'll sort of be our guardrails. Like the Anaheim City Council is going to end up being our best friends as Disney fans because there was a time when they were trying to like change where they were going to build a hotel wall and it was literally less than a foot away from where they were previously going to do it, and because it was in a different location, quote unquote, the city council turned it down. Like they are going to try to make sure that this is, and listen, they have a city council that's now more willing to work with them, which is great. But I do think that they are going to be thinking about us because they need votes. Disney needs us to, you know, continue to pay, but Magic Key holders are going to keep buying Magic Keys. We're going to keep taking cross-country flights to go to that theme park. It's the city council that needs to make sure that Disney stays honest. So I think that is a really good point you make. As we are now seeing some of these Fantasy Springs attractions that are opening up overseas, do you think that we get any, maybe not carbon copies, but any of this technology comes over from that new Frozen ride and the new Peter Pan attraction and the Rapunzel attraction? There have been rumors of a Frozen land at Disneyland for a long time now, and we already have quote unquote blue sky announcements about 2 more Frozen movies. So I can't imagine that we don't get something Anna and Elsa over there.
Yeah, I will be shocked if they don't say anything about getting a Frozen land. That's, you know, the little darling of Disney where it was a huge blockbuster hit. They're, you know, saying we're going to get 2 more movies in the franchise, so it's going to stay relevant. And I think that they're going to try to bring some of that, no pun intended, magic of the new Tokyo Disney Sea Frozen back stateside. I don't think it's going to be a one-to-one carbon copy or anything like that, but I do think they'll try to capitalize on kind of the buzz that's gotten. Now that they see people, oohing and eyeing over it, I absolutely see them saying, yep, we'll tell you we're doing a Frozen Land.
I do believe there's some sort of deal that they have with the Oriental Land Company, who actually owns the Tokyo Disneyland theme parks. So Tokyo Disney Sea and Tokyo Disneyland are not technically owned by the Walt Disney Company. There is some sort of deal that they have that the Oriental Land Company gets to keep new technology for X amount of time. So I don't think we're getting a carbon copy of those rides, like Maz said, but it would be nice if we got something that looked a little more like those animatronics we're seeing from Tiana and less like the ones that we have in Frozen Ever After in Epcot. And I'm kind of hoping that we get that change to the ride in Epcot as well, because having the first Frozen ride become that outdated that quickly, I think is a bad look.
If they could even update the faces so they're not screens anymore, that would be huge. I mean, I wrote it not that long ago, and Anna's face, I think it was, wasn't working, and it was just red. And like, that's terrifying for young children, first of all. If you're going through this ride and you see Elsa waving and then Anna's face is just red with nothing on it, like, that's not great. So if they could kind of change that so we don't have that as a possibility, I'd love that.
Have you ever ridden it where you have Elsa's arms just stay down and she's singing Let It Go, but her arms are just by her side like a person awkwardly getting their picture taken when you forget what to do with your arms? It's so funny sometimes. And then there's been a couple times, yes, I know I'm spoiled. I get to ride these things a lot. But then there's some times where she's like trying to lift her arms and they're not coming up, and it's kind of like a John McCain thing. And it is so bizarre at times and it looks so bad. And it's part of the Disney problem when you throw spaghetti at the wall and you have to come up with things. You have to open things. I want to ask you about this because it's going to be sort of related to it. We know that we're getting Big Thunder closed for a while. We're getting Test Track rethemed. We already mentioned that. Do you think, I don't know if this will be an announcement as much as, well, a D23 announcement anyway. Do you think we're ever going to get Rise of the Resistance shut down for a few months so they can fix it, so we can get the experience that we had back in December of 2019?
Oh boy. Okay. Well, now we're kind of getting into another angle here, but I don't think they'll close Rise of the Resistance until they build an expansion to Hollywood Studios, because I think they depend on that ride to eat so much capacity that they have to put something else in Hollywood Studios that can match the demand and match the capacity that Rise of the Resistance, attracts. And once they've got that up and running, they'll be able to close Rise and kind of make sure that it gets back to its premium form. But I would be surprised if we hear anything about that in the next 5 years, because I think it runs enough right now.
Okay, there have been a few times where we have revisited topics on the podcast. Like, most of the time, once we talk about something, we've talked about it and it's done, right? If we don't get an announcement sometime by the end of this year about at least an update not a re-theme, but just an actual mechanical refurb of Rise of the Resistance, I think we have to go back and address, is Star Wars Galaxy's Edge a success? Because I think that the best ride in Walt Disney World property right now is not working properly, and that's a bad look. When your best isn't working properly, then Hagrid's Velocicoaster, they work pretty well, and Epic Universe is coming. So the one thing that Disney could say is, well, we have Rise of the Resistance. And right now, the last time I wrote it, I was like, is Kylo going to be in A mode? Is Kylo going to be in A mode? And when he was, I was so excited. And I got off the ride, and we both know Scott. I talked to my friend Scott, and I was like, I was coming off the ride. I'm like, Kylo was in A mode. And he's like, I haven't seen that in years. Like, we were so excited. And that is such an embarrassment at this point to Disney, I think, that ride is working in such a weird way. Now, do you think we will get any announcements on changes to Hollywood Studios, or are we waiting for more big picture things to happen when it comes to that, i.e. Marvel?
I I think we're gonna have a little lull with Hollywood Studios. There is a rumor swirling, which is a rumor, so no basis there. There is a rumor that there will be an expansion with a second Star Wars land. If true, potentially very big. However, I feel like Hollywood, not to say it's the forgotten child, but right now it's there are other areas that demand more attention. But that being said, I mean, like you said, Rise needs maintenance. I think specifically with Rise, it's running like three different ride systems at the same time. So I think when they do shut it down, they're almost going to have to like reprogram those systems because the technology has improved since it opened. So that's going to be a long project. I think that Tower of Terror needs some long term love because part of it seems to close down pretty frequently right now. I think realistically, the only thing we might get at Hollywood Studios is a rock and roller coaster retheme. And I don't think it'll be a retrack or anything like that. It'll just be a music update.
I definitely think that is coming because every day, every week, the Aerosmith thing is becoming a little more problematic. It's also becoming just, there's only so long that you're going to have even the dads in your group being Aerosmith fans, right? The dads in the group are now Pearl Jam fans, as far as, and that pains me to say as a Pearl Jam fan from my youth, to realize I'm in that age bracket now, but it's the truth. Like, Aerosmith is being aged out for that park, and I think we're going to get an actual intellectual property on that attraction, and it's probably for the best. Rock and Roller Coaster was fun, and I think everybody has enjoyed it, but there needs to be an update there. And like you said, with Hollywood Studios, they just had their Walls of Death refurb when they built Galaxy's Edge and Toy Story Land and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway. So that park was under construction for such a long time that I don't think they want to do a lot to it. But it is definitely the park I visit the least because, with the exception of Alien Swirling Saucers and Star Tours, every ride is an e-ticket attraction with a wait over an hour.
Yeah, they need to add something to Hollywood Studios. And, I don't think it'll be anytime soon, like you said, but they need to add something that will be less demanding, but able to kind of, maybe an Omni mover or something of that type where it can just keep moving people through. And, you can have a super high capacity for it to kind of bring down those other wait times. And it's especially interesting to me that this is a thing in Hollywood studios because Hollywood studios has so many shows. And I don't know if people just aren't watching the shows, if the shows aren't interesting to them. Do they need to start looking at, as much as I love the Indiana Jones stunt show, do they need to update it to something that kids are going to want to sit and watch more?
The Indiana Jones stunt show, in my humble opinion, is a huge problem because A, it has been there forever, which nostalgia wise, awesome. But how often do you do it? I mean, you're a big Indiana Jones fan, so maybe you do it a little more than most. But I do it maybe once a year just out of that nostalgia factor. But, I'm kind of one of the people that they want to have sitting in a show because you're taking me out of a queue. You're taking an annual pass holder who's there all the time out of line for Slinky if I'm in a show. But the other reason that I think this Indiana Jones show needs at least an update is the Bourne Stuntacular over at Universal, which that opened, with the park when the parks reopened. I don't want to say post-pandemic. You understand what I mean. When they opened in June of 2020, because Universal opened even earlier, that just blows Indiana Jones out of the water. They have such a technologically advanced stunt show over there that is more like what actual stunts are like in the movies now than the Indiana Jones stunt show is like how stunts are done for movies. So I think it just looks outdated and it makes Disney look like they're following. Yes, we all love the nostalgia, and Disney has the nostalgia, and sometimes for Disney fans, it's hard to let go of something. But this one, I think we're going to have to at least get it updated drastically, because once you've done that Bourne Stunt show, you don't need to do Indiana Jones.
Yeah, that's very true. The Bourne Stunt show is, a feat. And Indy at least needs, I don't know. I don't know how popular Bourne is with young audiences nowadays. But it's pulling people in.
Doesn't matter. I have never seen a Bourne movie. And I watch that stunt show and I will sit in that. First of all, theirs is indoors, so it's air conditioned, which is a huge benefit as well. But that stunt show is so good, I don't care. There are those fight scenes where actual actors are fighting and there's video actors behind them. And when they first opened it, the only way you could tell who was a quote unquote real person was because they were wearing a mask. It was so well done. Now, I agree with you. Like, the Indiana Jones IP is so much stronger than Bourne. So if they can update Indiana Jones, I'm not saying get rid of it, but they have to change something so that people like you, people like me, we want to get out of the queues for those other attractions and get in this line.
Yeah, there needs to be something. I don't know if part of the answer to Hollywood studios is expanding the Disney Junior section or eliminating it entirely. It's one of those, it could go either way situations. And again, I don't think we're going to hear anything about that this year. But I think on the horizon, it's something Disney needs to keep their eye on.
That's where we'll leave things off in this episode of the podcast. Maz will be back next week so that the two of us can continue this conversation and continue to get ready for the D23 Expo in August. I really want to thank Maz for always making the time to be on the show. It isn't easy. We're all busy, and sometimes Disney doesn't consult with our schedules when making announcements. The most precious resource any of us have is time, and we wouldn't have been able to last well over 3 years already if it wasn't for Maz being so accommodating. This has been episode 174 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty, and we will be back with another brand new episode next Thursday. Until then, have a great week.